Welcome to the MasterMind Library. It's episode 4, and we're going deep into chapter 3 of Psycho Cybernetics, Imagination, the first key to your success mechanism. So we're going to dive right into it. Let me go ahead and move y'all to the page on the virtual book, and then we'll get started. All right, that's chapter 2. All right, chapter 3, Imagination, the first key to your success mechanism. Imagination plays a far more important role in our lives than most of us realize. I have seen this demonstrated many times in my practice. A particularly memorable instance of this fact concerned a patient who was literally forced to visit my office by his family. He was a man of about 40, unmarried, who held down a routine job during the day and kept himself in his room when the work day was over, never going anywhere, never doing anything. He had had many jobs and never seemed able to stay with any of them for any great length of time. His problem was that he had a rather large nose and ears that protruded a little more than is normal. He considered himself ugly and funny looking. He imagined that the people he came in contact with during the day were laughing at him and talking about him behind his back because he was so odd. His imaginings grew so strong that he actually feared going out into the business world and moving among people. He hardly felt safe, even in his own home. The poor man even imagined that his family was ashamed of him because he was peculiar looking, not like other people. Actually, his facial deficiencies were not serious. His nose was of the classical Roman type, and his ears, though somewhat large, attracted no more attention than those of thousands of people with similar ears. In desperation, his family brought him to me to see if I could help him. I saw that he did not need surgery, only an understanding of the fact that his imagination had wrought such havoc with his self-image that he had lost sight of the truth. He was not really ugly. People did not consider him odd and laugh at him because of his appearance. His imagination alone was responsible for his misery. His imagination had set up an automatic negative failure mechanism within him, and it was operating full blast to his extreme misfortune. Fortunately, after several sessions with him and with the help of his family, he was able gradually to realize that the power of his own imagination was responsible for his plight, and he succeeded in building up a true self-image and achieving the confidence he needed by applying creative imagination rather than destructive imagination. Creative imagination is not something reserved for the poets, the philosophers, the inventors. It enters into our every act. For imagination sets the goal picture, which our automatic mechanism works on. We act or fail to act, not because of will, as is so commonly believed, but because of imagination. A human being always acts and feels and performs in accordance with what he imagines to be true about himself and his environment. This is a basic and fundamental law of mind. It is the way we are built. When we see this law of mind graphically and dramatically demonstrated in a hypnotized subject, we are prone to think that there is something occult or supernormal at work. Actually, what we are witnessing is the normal operating processes of the human brain and nervous system. For example, if a good hypnotic subject is told that he is at the North Pole, he will not only shiver and appear to be cold, his body will react just as if he were cold, and goose pimples will develop. The same phenomenon has been demonstrated on wide awake college students by asking them to imagine that one hand is immersed in ice water. Thermometer readings show that the temperature does drop in the treated hand. Tell a hypnotized subject that your finger is a red hot poker, and he will not only grimace with pain at your touch, but his cardiovascular and lymphatic systems will react just as if your finger were a red hot poker and produce inflammation and perhaps a blister on the skin. When college students, wide awake, have been told to imagine that a spot on their forehead was hot. Temperature readings have shown an actual increase in skin temperature. Your nervous system cannot tell the difference between an imagined experience and a real experience. In either case, it reacts automatically to information which you give to it from your forebrain. Your nervous system reacts appropriately to what you think or imagine to be true. The secret of hypnotic power. Dr. Theodore Xenophon Barber has conducted extensive research into the phenomena of hypnosis, both when he was associated with the psychology department of American University in Washington, D.C., and also after becoming associated with the Laboratory of Social Relations at Harvard. Writing in Science Digest recently, he said, "We found that hypnotic subjects are able to do surprising things only when convinced that the hypnotist's words are true statements. When the hypnotist has guided the subject to the point where he is convinced that the hypnotist's words are true statements, the subject then behaves differently because he thinks and believes differently. The phenomena of hypnosis have always seemed mysterious because it has always been difficult to understand how belief can bring about such unusual behavior. It always seemed as if there must be something more, some unfathomable force or power at work. However, the plain truth is that when a subject is convinced that he is deaf, he behaves as if he is deaf. When he is convinced that he is insensitive to pain, he can undergo surgery without anesthesia. The mysterious force or power does not exist. Could you be hypnotized? Science Digest, January 1958. A little reflection will show why it is a very good thing for us that we do feel and act according to what we believe or imagine to be true. Truth determines action and behavior. The human brain and nervous system are engineered to react automatically and appropriately to the problems and challenges in the environment. For example, a man does not need to stop and think that self survival requires that he run if he meets a grizzly bear on the trail. He does not need to decide to become afraid. The fear response is both automatic and appropriate. First, it makes him want to flee. The fear then triggers bodily mechanisms which soup up his muscles so that he can run faster than he has ever run before. His heartbeat is quickened. Adrenaline, a powerful muscle stimulant, is poured into the bloodstream. All bodily functions not necessary to running are shut down. The stomach stops working and all available blood is sent to the muscles. Breathing is much faster and the oxygen supply to the muscles is increased manifold. All this, of course, is nothing new. Most of us learned it in high school. What we have not been so quick to realize, however, is that the brain and nervous system which react automatically to environment is the same brain and nervous system which tells us what the environment is. The reactions of the man meeting the bear are commonly thought of as due to emotions rather than to ideas. Yet, it was an idea, information received from the outside world and evaluated by the forebrain, which sparked the so called emotional reactions. Thus, it was basically idea or belief, which was the true causative agent, rather than emotion, which came as a result. In short, the man on the trail reacted to what the thought or believed or imagined the environment to be. The messages brought to us from the environment consist of nerve impulses from the various sense organs. The nerve impulses are decoded, interpreted, and evaluated in the brain and made known to us in the form of ideas or mental images. In the final analysis, it is these mental images that we react to. You act and feel not according to what things are really like, but according to the image your mind holds of what they are like. You have certain mental images of yourself, your world, and the people around you, and you behave as though these images were the truth, the reality, rather than the things they represent. Let us suppose, for example, that the man on the trail had not met a real bear, but a movie actor dressed in a bear costume. If he thought and imagined the actor to be a bear, his emotional and nervous reactions would have been exactly the same. Or let us suppose he met a large shaggy dog, which his fear-ridden imagination mistook for a bear. Again, he would react automatically to what he believed to be true concerning himself and his environment. It follows that if our ideas and mental images concerning ourselves are distorted or unrealistic, then our reaction to our environment will likewise be inappropriate. Why not imagine yourself successful? Realizing that our actions, feelings, and behavior are the result of our own images and beliefs give us the lever that psychology has always needed for changing personality. It opens a new psychological door to gaining skill, success, and happiness. Mental pictures offers us an opportunity to practice new traits and attitudes, which otherwise we could not do. This is possible because, again, your nervous system cannot tell the difference between an actual experience and one that is vividly imagined. If we picture ourselves performing in a certain manner, it is nearly the same as the actual performance. Mental practice helps to make perfect. In a controlled experiment, psychologist R.A. Vandel proved that mental practice in throwing darts at a target, wherein the person sits for a period each day in front of the target and imagines throwing darts at it, improves aim as much as actually throwing darts. Research Quarterly reports an experiment on the effects of mental practice on improving skill in sinking basketball free throws. One group of students actually practiced throwing the ball every day for 20 days and were scored on the first and last days. A second group was scored on the first and last days and engaged in no sort of practice in between. A third group was scored on the first day, then spent 20 minutes a day, imagining that they were throwing the ball at the goal. When they missed, they would imagine that they corrected their aim accordingly. The first group, which actually practiced 20 minutes every day, improved in scoring 24%. The second group, which had no sort of practice, showed no improvement. The third group, which practiced in their imagination, improved in scoring 23%. How imagination practice won a chess championship. The April 1955 issue of Reader's Digest contained an article from the Rotarian by Joseph Phillips called Chess. They call it a game. In this article, Phillips tells how the great chess champion, Capablanca, was so superior to all competition that it was believed by experts that he would never be beaten in a match played. Yet he lost the championship to a rather obscure player, Alekhine, who had given no hint that he even posed a serious threat to the great Capablanca. The chess world was stunned by the upset, which today would be comparable to a Golden Gloves finalist defeating the heavyweight champion of the world. Phillips tells us that Alekhine had trained for the match very much like a boxer conditioning himself for a fight. He retired to the country, cut out smoking and drinking, and did calisthenics. For 3 months, he played chess only in his mind, building up steam for the moment when he would meet the champion. Mental pictures can help you sell more goods. In his book, How to Make $25,000 a Year Selling, Charles B. Roth tells how a group of salesmen in Detroit who tried a new idea increased their sales 100%. Another group in New York increased their sales by 150%. And individual salesmen using the same idea have increased their sales up to 400%. Charles B. Roth, How to Make $25,000 a Year Selling, Prentice Hall Incorporated, Englewood Cliffs, New Jersey. And what is this magic that accomplishes so much for salesmen? It is something called role playing, and you should know about it because if you will let it, it may help you to double your sales. What is role playing? Well, it is simply imagining yourself in various sales situations, then solving them in your own mind until you know what to say and what to do whenever the situation comes up in real life. It is what is called on the football field skull practice. The reason why it accomplishes so much is that selling is simply a matter of situations. One is created every time you talk to a customer. He says something or asks a question or raises an objection. If you always know how to counter what he says or answers his questions or handle the objection, you make sales. A role playing salesman at night when he is alone will create these situations. He will imagine the prospect throwing the widest kind of curves at him. Then he will work out the best answer to them. No matter what the situation is, you can prepare for it beforehand by means of imagining yourself and your prospect face to face while he is raising objections and creating problems, and you are handling them properly. Use mental pictures to get a better job. The late William Moulton Marston, well known psychologist, recommended what he called rehearsal practice to men and women who came to him for help in job advancement. If you have an important interview coming up, such as making an application for a job, his advice was plan for the interview in advance. Go over in your mind all the various questions that you are likely to be asked. Think about the answers you are going to give. Then rehearse the interview in your mind. Even if none of the questions you have rehearsed come up, the rehearsal practice will still work wonders. It gives you confidence. And even though real life has not set lines to be recited like a stage play, rehearsal practice will help you to ad lib and react spontaneously to whatever situation you find yourself in because you have practiced reacting spontaneously. Don't be a ham actor, Dr. Marston would say, explaining that we are always acting out some role in life. Why not select the right role, the role of a successful person, and rehearse it? Writing in your life magazine, Dr. Marston said, frequently, the next step in your career cannot be taken without first gaining some experience in the work you will be called upon to perform. Bluff may open the door to a job you know nothing about, but in 9 cases out of 10, it won't keep you from being fired when your inexperience becomes evident. There's only one way I know to project your practical knowledge beyond your present occupation, and that is rehearsal planning. A concert pianist practices in his head. Artur Schnabel, the world famous concert pianist, took lessons for only 7 years. He hated practice and seldom does practice for any length of time at the actual piano keyboard. When questioned about his small amount of practice, as compared with other concert pianists, he said, I practice in my head. C.G. Kopp of Holland, a recognized authority on teaching piano, recommends that all pianists practice in their heads. A new composition, he says, should be first gone over in the mind. It should be memorized and played in the mind before ever touching fingers to the keyboard. Imagination practice can lower your golf score. Time magazine reported that when Ben Hogan is playing in a tournament, he mentally rehearses each shot just before making it. He makes the shot perfectly in his imagination, feels the club head strike the ball just as it should, feels himself performing the perfect follow through, and then steps up to the ball and depends upon what he calls muscle memory to carry out the shot just as he has imagined it. Alex Morrison, perhaps the most well known golf teacher in the world, has actually worked out a system of mental practice. It enables you to improve your golf score by setting in an easy chair and practicing mentally what he calls the 7 Morrison keys. The mental side of golf represents 90% of the game, he says. The physical side, 8%, and the mechanical side, 2%. In his book, Better Golf Without Practice, Simon and Schuster, New York, Morrison tells how he taught Lou Lur to break 90 for the first time, with no actual practice whatsoever. Morrison and Lur set, sit in an easy chair in his living room and relax while he demonstrated for him the correct swing and gave a brief lecture on the Morrison keys. Lur was instructed to engage in no actual practice on the links, but instead spend 5 minutes a day relaxing in his easy chair, visualizing himself attending to the keys correctly. Morrison goes on to tell how several days later, with no physical preparation whatever, Lur joined his regular foursome and amazed them by shooting 9 holes in an even par, 36. The core of the Morrison system is you must have a clear mental picture of the correct thing before you can do it successfully. Morrison, by this method, enabled Paul Whitman and many other celebrities to chop as much as 10 to 12 strokes off their scores. Johnny Bulla, the well-known professional golfer, wrote an article several years ago in which he said that having a clear mental image of just where you wanted the ball to go and where you wanted it, what you wanted it to do, was more important than form in golf. Most of the pros, said Bulla, have one or more serious flaws in their form, yet they manage to shoot good golf. It was Bulla's theory that if you would picture the end result, see the ball going where you wanted it to go, and have the confidence to know that it was going to do what you wanted, your subconscious would take over and direct your muscles correctly. If your grip was wrong and your stance not in the best form, your subconscious would still take care of that by directing your muscles to do whatever was necessary to compensate for the error in form. The real secret of mental picturing. Successful men and women have, since the beginning of time, used mental pictures and rehearsal practice to achieve success. Napoleon, for example, practiced soldiering in his imagination for many years before he ever went on an actual battlefield. Webb and Morgan, in their book, Making the Most of Your Life, tell us that the notes Napoleon made from his readings during these years of study filled, when printed, 400 pages. He imagined himself as a commander and drew maps of the island of Corsica, showing where he would place various defenses, making all his calculations with mathematical precision. Conrad Hilton imagined himself operating a hotel long before he ever bought one. When a boy used to play that he was a hotel operator, Henry J. Kaiser has said that each of his business accomplishments was realized in his imagination before it appeared in actuality. It is no wonder that the art of mental picturing has in the past sometimes been associated with magic. However, the new science of cybernetics gives us an insight into why mental picturing produces such amazing results and shows that these results are not due to magic, but the natural, normal functioning of our minds and brains. Cybernetics regards the human brain, nervous system, and muscular system as a highly complex servo mechanism, an automatic goal seeking machine which steers its way to a target or goal by use of feedback data and stored information, automatically correcting course when necessary. As stated earlier, this new concept does not mean that you are a machine, but that your physical brain and body functions as a machine, which you operate. This automatic creative mechanism within you can operate in only one way. It must have a target to shoot at. As Alex Morrison says, you must first clearly see a thing in your mind before you can do it. When you do see a thing clearly in your mind, your creative success mechanism within you takes over and does the job much better than you could do it by conscious effort or willpower. Instead of trying hard by conscious effort to do the thing by iron jawed willpower, and all the while worrying and picturing to yourself all the things that are likely to go wrong, you simply relax the strain. Stop trying to do it by strain and effort. Picture to yourself the target you really want to hit and let your creative success mechanism take over. Thus, mental picturing, the desired end result, literally forces you to use positive thinking. You are not relieved thereafter from effort and work, but your efforts are used to carry you forward toward your goal rather than in futile mental conflict, which results when you want and try to do one thing, but picture to yourself something else. Finding your best self. This same creative mechanism within you can help you achieve your best possible self if you will form a picture in your imagination of the self you want it to be and see yourself in the new role. This is necessary. This is a necessary condition to personality transformation, regardless of the method of therapy used. Somehow, before a person can change, he must see himself in a new role. Edward McGoldrick uses this technique in helping alcoholics cross the bridge from the old self to the new self. Each day, each day, he has his students close their eyes, relax the body as much as possible, and create a mental motion picture of themselves as they would like to be. In this mental motion picture, they see themselves as sober, responsible persons. They see themselves actually enjoying life without liquor. This is not the only technique used by McGoldrick, but it is one of the basic methods used at Bridge House, which has a higher record of cure of for alcoholics than any other organization in the country. I myself have witnessed veritable miracles in personality transformation when an individual changes his self image. However, today we are only beginning to glimpse the potential creative power which stems from the human imagination, and particularly our images concerning ourselves. Consider the implications, for example, in the following news release, which appeared a couple of years ago under an Associated Press dateline. Just imagine you're sane. San Francisco. Some mental patients can improve their lot and perhaps shorten their stay in hospitals just by imagining they are normal. They are normal. Two psychologists with the Veteran Administration at Los Angeles reported. Dr. Harry M. Grayson and Dr. Leonard B. Olinger told the American Psychological Association they tried the idea on 45 men hospitalized as neuropsychiatrists. The patients were given the usual personality test. Then they were asked flatly to take the test a second time and answer the questions as they would if they were a typical, well-adjusted person on the outside. Three-fourths of them turned in improved test performances, and some of the changes for the better were dramatic, the psychologist reported. In order for these patients to answer the question, adjusted person would answer. They had to imagine how a typical, well adjusted person would act. They had to imagine themselves in the role of a well adjusted person. And this in itself was enough to cause them to begin acting like and feeling like a well adjusted person. We can begin to see why the late Dr. Albert Edward Wiggum called your mental picture of yourself the strongest force within you. Know the truth about yourself. The aim of self image psychology is not to create a arrogant, egoistic, all important. Such an image is an inappropriate and unrealistic as the inferior image of self. Our aim is to find the real self and to bring our mental images of ourselves more in line with the objects they represent. However, it is common knowledge amongst psychologists that most of us underrate ourselves, shortchange ourselves, or sell ourselves short. Actually, there is no such thing as a superior complex. People who seem to have one are actually suffering from feelings of inferiority. Their superior self is a fiction, a cover up to hide from themselves and others their deep down feelings of inferiority and insecurity. How can you know the truth about yourself? How can you make a true evaluation? It seems to me that here, psychology must turn to religion. The scriptures tell us that God created man a little lower than the angels and gave him dominion. That God created man in his own image. If we really believe in an all wise, all powerful, all loving creator, then we are in a position to draw some logical conclusions about that which he has created, man. In the first place, such an all wise and all powerful creator would not turn out inferior products any more than a master painter would paint inferior canvases. Such a creator would not deliberately engineer his product to fail any more than a manufacturer would deliberately build failure into an automobile. The fundamentalists tell us that man's chief purpose and reason for living is to glorify God. And the humanists tell us that man's primary purpose is to express himself fully. However, if we take the premise that God is a loving creator and has the same interest in his creation that an earthly father has in his children, then it seems to me that the fundamentalists and the humanists are saying the same thing. What brings more glory, pride, and satisfaction to a father than seeing his offspring do well, succeed, and express to the full their abilities and talents? Have you ever sat by the father of a football star during a game? Jesus expressed the same thought when he told us not to hide our light under a bushel, but to let our light shine, so that your Father may be glorified. I cannot believe that it brings any glory to God when his children go around with hangdog expressions, being miserable, afraid to lift up their heads and be somebody. As Dr. Leslie D. Weatherhead has said, if we have in our minds a picture of ourselves as fear haunted and defeated nobodies, we must get rid of that picture at once and hold up our heads. That is a false picture, and the false must go. God sees us as men and women in whom and through whom he can do great work. He can do a great work. He sees us as already serene, confident, and cheerful. He sees us not as pathetic victims of life, but masters of the art of living, not wanting sympathy, but imparting help to others, and therefore thinking less and less of ourselves, and full not of self concern, but of love and laughter and a desire to serve. Let us look at the real selves which are in the making the moment we believe in their existence. We must recognize the possibility of change and believe in the self we are now in the process of becoming. That old sense of unworthiness and failure must go. It is false, and we are not to believe in what is false. Leslie D. Weatherhead, Prescription for Anxiety, Abingdon Press, New York. Practice exercise. Hold a picture of yourself long and steadily enough in your mind's eye, and you will be drawn toward it, said Dr. Harry Emerson Fosdick. Picture yourself vividly as defeated, and that alone will make victory impossible. Picture yourself vividly as winning, and that alone will contribute immeasurably to success. Great living starts with a picture held in your imagination of what you would like to do or be. Your present self was built upon your own imagination pictures of yourself in the past, which grew out of interpretations and evaluations which you placed upon experience. Now you are to use the same method to build an adequate self image that you previously used to build an inadequate one. Set aside a period of 30 minutes each day where you can be alone and undisturbed. Relax and make yourself as comfortable as possible. Now close your eyes and exercise your imagination. Many people find they get better results if they imagine themselves sitting before a large motion picture screen and imagine that they are seeing a motion picture of themselves. The important thing is to make these pictures as vivid and as detailed as possible. You want your mental pictures to approximate actual experience as much as possible. The way to do this is pay attention to small details, sights, sounds, objects in your imagined environment. One of my patients was using this exercise to overcome her fear of the dentist. She was unsuccessful until she began to notice small details in her imagined picture: the smell of the antiseptic in the office, the feel of the leather of the chair arms, the sight of the dentist's well manicured nails as his hands approached her mouth, etc. Details of the imagined environment are all important in this exercise because, for all practical purposes, you are creating a practice experience. And if the imagination is vivid enough and detailed enough, your imagination practice is equivalent to an actual experience insofar as your nervous system is concerned. The next important thing to remember is that during this 30 minutes, you see yourself acting and reacting appropriately, successfully, ideally. It doesn't matter how you acted yesterday. You do not need to try to have faith. You do not need to try to have faith. You will act in the ideal way tomorrow. Your nervous system will take care of that in time if you continue to practice. See yourself acting, feeling, being as you want to be. Do not say to yourself, I am going to act this way tomorrow. Just say to yourself, I am going to imagine myself acting in this way now for 30 minutes today. Imagine how you would feel if you were already the sort of personality you want to be. If you have been shy and timid, see yourself moving among people with ease and poise and feeling because of it. If you have been fearful and anxious in certain situations, see yourself acting calmly and deliberately, acting with confidence and courage, and feeling expansive and confident because you are. This exercise builds new memories or stored data into your midbrain and central nervous system. It builds a new image of self. After practicing it for a time, you will be surprised to find yourself acting differently, more or less automatically and spontaneously, without trying. This is as it should be. You do not need to take thought or try or make an effort now in order to feel ineffective and act inadequately. Your present inadequate feeling and doing is automatic and spontaneous because of the memories, real and imagined, you have built into your automatic mechanism. You will find it will work just as automatically upon positive thoughts and experiences as upon negative ones. And that concludes chapter 3. All right, thank y'all for tuning in. And so today we were reading about the success mechanism within you, right? So the title of this chapter is Imagination, the first key to your success mechanism. So I was talking to one of my homeboys just the other day, and I was telling him that him and I, we both kind of agreed that we had spoke something into existence. And I told him, I said, listen, man, I came to a point in my mind where I said, this thing, we're doing this. This is happening. No matter how difficult it is, no matter how much it takes, no matter how much money that it costs, we're making this happen. This is going to be done, and we're going to earn millions of dollars in this process as bosses. And when I came to that conclusion in my mind, truly like with my real desire at my core, that's when the things that I desired and didn't even know, some of it I didn't even know that I wanted or even needed for to move forward in these projects. They just kind of fell right in our laps, right? But we stayed diligent to creating the plan and writing the goals, brainstorming and figuring out the way forward, right? We used imagination to achieve this, right? Because right now we're creating something that most of the world, it doesn't exist. But the reality is, as long as it exists in our imagination, we can build it into a physical reality, right? So that is us taking the time to say, what is it that matters to me? I need to know who I am as well. I need to trust myself. All of these things are necessary to make something that's in our brain, right? A vision, to capture it and to make it plain and to make it a physical reality. Because as long as it's real in our spirit and in our mind, we can make it real in the physical reality. But that starts in imagination, and it starts with desire, and it also starts with a decision. We have to make a decision in our mind that this is what we are doing. And then there has to be, we have to take steps forward each day in the knowing that this is going to become real, in the knowing that this is real. We have to take steps every day. This is the faith part, right? Because obviously we can see it, but nobody else can see it, right? And that's okay. But if you can see it, you've got to keep moving forward as you see it. And then it unfolds in fruition. It becomes real. And even the people who said you were crazy, they didn't think you could do it. Now they start using the product. Now they want your services that they thought you were crazy creating. And it all stems from imagination. All of it. Now we make a lot of confirmations through reading. We have a lot of books that provide confirmation. But the idea, the most important part, happens in imagination. The creative success mechanism is turned on and works the way it's supposed to as a result of a person choosing to know that this thing that matters to them, this ideal that is worthy to them, is manifest. So that is chapter 3 of Psycho Cybernetics. All right. So tomorrow, tomorrow's Friday. So we're going to go into chapter 4, which is dehypnotizing yourself from false beliefs. Right. We're going to dive deep into that. Right. So I hope y'all tune in tomorrow, 8 a.m. Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. We're going through these books in the MasterMind Library. All right. We got a lot of books in there. Those books are very, very valuable from some highly credible authors. And we're going to dive deep into every single one of them. Right. The MasterMind Library is an ongoing show, 8 a.m. Monday through Friday. Tune in, share it, drop a comment. Maybe there's a book you'd like me to read. Drop it in the comments. Let's grow together. We've got to heal together. No one's going to do this for us. We've got to do this together. Y'all other leaders out there, share these videos. Send these videos to your people that you know need improvement, or they may want improvement. We've got to grow together, right? And y'all other leaders, like, let's come together in a mastermind, right? That's what the Mastermind Library is about. Let's come together and let's figure out how to do this even stronger, because maybe there's some other readers out there. Maybe there's some groups of people who want to be present on the broadcast during the reading, right? Let's work together, right? Because if we're going to grow in melanation, if we're going to grow in mankind, we've got to take every piece of what we got, bring it together, and not have a bunch of fingers. We got to become a fist. So that's the books, that's imagination, that's your strengths and talents, that's my strengths and talents, that's her and his strengths and talents, and that's us also allowing the children energy of today to lead us. Y'all be blessed. I'll see y'all tomorrow, 8 a.m.